One of Donald Trump's duties as president is to comfort the families of those who have died in school shootings, or at the very least, the school shootings that we choose to acknowledge on a national level. And since the government refuses to do anything to actually make these shootings less likely to happen, it's almost literally the least he can do. He is unfortunately wholly unqualified to do it, and that was demonstrated once again this week when he met with one of the parents of a Santa Fe high school student who died in that shooting. In advance of that meeting, he was speaking with reporters before boarding Air Force One. This is yesterday, and he talked about traveling to Texas, where he said, quote, "We're going to have a little fun today," which is an interesting way to describe meeting the families of those who have been killed in a mass shooting. But that was how he chose to describe it. Now, the mother of one 14-year-old, Rhonda Hart, who was the mother of Kimberly Vaughan, told the AP that Trump, in meeting with her, repeatedly used the word wacky to describe the shooter and the trench coat he wore. She said she told Trump, maybe if everyone had access to mental health care, we wouldn't be in this situation. Hart, an Army veteran, said she also suggested employing veterans as sentinels in schools. She said Trump responded, "And arm them?" She said no, but Trump kept mentioning arming classroom teachers, and she said it was like talking to a toddler. Yeah.
Well, instead of arming teachers, this is what I think we should do. We should ban gun ownership. That should be our guiding call. It's time to ban gun ownership.
All right, well, he said it, so go ahead and get angry.
Ban gun ownership.
So, by the way, let's just note for the record, because obviously a lot of people in this country, apparently including conservative Supreme Court justices, can't read. The only amendment in the US Constitution that mentions regulation is the Second Amendment. It says a well-regulated militia being necessary. They choose to ignore that completely. So even if you don't agree with Joe's idea of banning guns, which unquestionably would make us safer, you should at least know that the Founding Fathers wanted us to regulate guns, and anything else that is said is a total and utter lie. You can just read the Second Amendment for yourself. And the reason why I say it would unquestionably make us safer, Joe's proposal, even if you think there are downsides that make it not worth it, in your opinion, is the experience of every other country in the world. And so the idea of mental health, and I know that a lot of people make that suggestion in good faith, oh, we just improved mental health. We have the same exact mental health situation as every other country, but we have infinitely higher gun deaths. And the word infinite is only barely hyperbolic. In Japan, I think they had 6 gun deaths in a year. We have, I think, around 30,000, and that's because it's not because we're more insane than Japan. It's not because we have more video games than Japan. It's because we have more guns.
It's all about the guns, and this is, the NRA, a terrorist organization, holding America hostage so that they can perpetuate this fantasy of some kind of eventual revolt against the American government, or they're protecting themselves against. It is unbelievable to me to think that this man who has so little conscience and so little actual bearing could then anger a woman who lost their child. This is the most difficult kind of story for me to react to, because it hurts so badly. And you just think, yes, we have to ban AR-15s. Yes, we have to ban these types of weapons, and I agree with you. I think we should take a really long look at saying we don't need guns. We don't need guns in our society right now. The death toll is too high. The consequences to our moral conscience is just too high. I don't want to be afraid to walk into a school. I don't want to be afraid to go to a concert. I don't want to be afraid to walk down the street. This is hand in hand with, again, white supremacy, racism, an enforcement of a certain way of thinking about America, which has to expire. And we have to start to talk about how do we bring about peace and how do we bring about, nonviolence.
I'm so sick of people talking about the need for quote unquote reasonable gun control. When unreasonable and obscene things are happening to our kids, the answer isn't let's be reasonable. Let's be unreasonable in the response, which is why it's time for us as progressives to start calling for a ban on gun ownership.
And let's also acknowledge, of course, that we're not even getting reasonable gun control. We're not getting anything, and that's why I can't place myself in the position of a parent who just lost one of their kids. Thankfully, I've never had to experience anything remotely approaching that. but that your child would die in yet another 100% preventable mass shooting. And then to have a person come who is better than anyone else, the embodiment of a complete lack of interest or will in doing anything about the problem. He is a guy that if he wanted to, could change the law. He could do it right now. He can't change everything unilaterally, but he's willing to do it on any number of different issues involving the environment with his executive orders. And he chooses to do nothing here while then going off and talking favorably about the NRA. I guess I admire the bravery of these parents to even be willing to sit down with him, but I feel like that would only make me feel worse, that this is a guy who seems to delight in working with the industry that perpetuates the culture that produces these shootings.
Yeah, he just unilaterally used laws from World War II era and on to impose tariffs and to support coal power plants, and he said it was a matter of national security. Tens of thousands of people dying every year is a matter of national security. We have about 10 9/11s every single year from gun violence in America. And that's national security, not because, hey, you have donors that are from the coal industry. Yeah. That is not national security. But I want to give you a couple of other perspectives here. Pamela Stanich was also with the president, and I get that it depends probably to some degree at least on your perspective going into the meeting and your political perspective. She was a supporter of the president, so she came away impressed by him and said that he showed sincerity, compassion, and concern. But then this quote, she certainly didn't mean it this way, but was heartbreaking to me. She said, changes are coming for the good. Thank you, Mr. Trump. There are no changes coming for the good. He is not going to protect you in any way, shape, or form.
Maybe he'll pray harder this time.
Yeah, and
this is not national security. This is male insecurity. We talk about serial killers, and we can clearly see how that's motivated by sexual violence. And we have to also look at these school shootings. I mean, one of the things that always seems to happen is violence directed at the female students, and then it pushes it further. And the truth of the matter is, like, we have a sickness, and our men are running towards guns as some way to assert their rage and needing to push themselves up in terms of power. And I think we have to talk about that part of it. I think we have to talk about how this is a male problem, and mostly a white male problem. So when we're talking about gun control, we also have to talk about these issues what is leading our men down this crazy path? What is this misogyny that's taking root? What is this racism that's taking root? It is so deeply upsetting, but we're never going to get to the problem unless we actually start talking about the root of it, which is, I think, deeply psychological. Yes, mental illness, but it's not it's a pervasive type of mental illness in America to think that you need a weapon, a rifle, an AR-15 to become a real man. I think that's crazy.
I want to give you two last perspectives here. This is not the only time that he's come across as uncaring in a similar situation. You also had actually several different instances. There's the soldier who died in Africa, and he was terribly rude to his wife, and that became a huge issue. But also Samantha Fuentes was shot in Parkland in that shooting. She survived, but she's got shrapnel behind her, lodged behind her right eye. And Trump came to comfort her. She said, "I've never been so unimpressed by a person in my life, and he didn't make me feel better in the slightest." Now, the last perspective is Donald Trump. So we'll end on an otherwise tragic and very sad story in a humorous way, because as a candidate, Donald Trump said we're all wrong about what some are calling his empathy gap. He said empathy would be, quote, one of the strongest things about Trump. Who says that? Who talks like that? And is that what a person who's empathetic towards others would say? No. Like, you know what's really good about me? How much I could empathize with you is one of the strongest things about Uyghur. Like, if anyone else said that, you'd say lock him up. This guy's crazy. I mean, you want to talk about mental health problems. Who says I'm really strong on empathy, let alone using the third person?
Strong empathy.
Can I get the last word?
Yes.
It's time to ban gun ownership.
There you go. That's right. I love the strength. There you go. Time to fight back. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.